Okay, these are some dietary names to help people just have everything clear. The best way to categorize diets, as Nathan Pritikin had said, was between low fat versus high fat. So the lowest of the low fat diets is the Kempner rice diet. That's about 2.5% of calories from fat. White rice has only 1% of calories from fat. And then he also added fruit to it, which is very low in fat. It's also very low in protein, about 4%, which was protective of the kidneys, as a lot of his patients had kidney failure, so he wanted to keep protein and fat as low as possible. He also kept sodium very low. Okay, and some of the point I'm making is his patients did extraordinarily well with these very low amounts of fat and protein. The next diet is the Spartan vegan diet, which is my diet, Peter Rogers' diet. And it's only about 4% of calories from fat, about 10% of calories from protein. The reason the protein is that high is because I do like beans. You know, if I had cancer or something, I would stop eating the beans. But the beans are pretty convenient for all the fiber and the second meal effect, prolonged satisfaction of hunger. And that's still a pretty low amount of calories from protein. And it's from plant protein, which is preferable, less methionine, less leucine. About 86% of calories from carbohydrate, and I only eat 100% organic. Whole food meaning it's a single ingredient. If there's a second ingredient, they can add other things to it. And I'm a big believer organic only, because the non-organic food just keeps getting worse and worse. They keep putting more additives into it. The McDougall diet was 7% of calories from fat, 10% from protein, 83% carbohydrate. Now, the Esselstyn diet is very much like the McDougall diet. He just didn't specify the percentage calories from fat. He would just say keep it less than 10%, which just automatically happens if you're eating low-fat plant foods. And Esselstyn would not allow any nuts or seeds because they're so high in fat. And he would end up, about 80-10-10. And Pritikin's the one who sort of, I believe, figured out this 80-10-10 stuff long time ago. I don't know, like back around 1970 or so. Pritikin was uncertain if people could eat a little bit of meat, partly because he wanted to make it popular with the patients, but also because he was concerned about getting enough amount of vitamin B12. But it's looking like vitamin B12 is fake, so that's become a non-issue, I believe. It's not completely resolved, but if you're curious on that subject, take a look at the Anthea Hayes book about the enigma of vitamin B12. It's a great book. It just came out recently. Okay, the raw till 4 stuff, meaning raw stuff like the fruitarian stuff. Durin, Ryder, and Freely the Banana Girl kind of popularized that. And there's a lot of pretty smart fruitarians on the internet. It's just a fruitarian diet is really difficult unless you live in a tropical place and you can grow your own food, and that's just not realistic for the vast majority of people. And there's other issues with fruits, but I do think fruits are pretty good. They're great food, okay? We're not going to get into all the fruit issues right here, but logistically, unless you live in the tropics and grow your own food, it's not too doable. Okay, OMAD just means 1 meal a day without specifying, what the diet itself is. The vegan Mediterranean diet has become very popular, and this is the most popular plant-based diet on the internet, but I think it's bogus, and I call it the high-fat phony diet. And it's often used as a vehicle to sell supplements, okay, and to sell popular commercial foods. That's why I jokingly also call it the buy my bullshit diet, because it's used as a platform to say plant diets are good and olive oil is good for you. No, it's not. Or canola oil's okay. Omega-6 oils aren't that bad. You need to get your flax with its cyanide-like components in it. You need your soy, even though it's good for infertility and thyroid goiter, and sprayed with hexane. If it's not organic, I would stay away from it. And glyphosate, it's toxic nonsense. I think it's good for control of the the population. Nuts and seeds are super high in fat, like around 85%. You shouldn't be eating that. Because this vegan Mediterranean diet, when you look closely at it, the only thing that's reverse coronary artery disease is low-fat vegan. And so, Esselstyn was keeping all his patients below 10%. The vegan Mediterranean diet, I calculated the percentage of calories from fat, and that's without, trying to be reasonable and generous and fair. And I got about 37% of calories from fat. It could easily be more than that. I mean, look at all the fat here. It's unbelievable. They allow avocados, which are often sprayed with that AP, what the letters that come next are, EE and then L. This stuff's terrible. Look up the chem data sheet, the MDS data sheet. You won't want to touch that stuff. They allow caffeine. They even pretend caffeine and coffee and tea are health foods. That's nonsense. Caffeine mimics the stress hormones, causing elevated cortisol and catecholamine. So it elevates your blood glucose, elevates your blood lipids. You don't want that. Coffee and tea, you're just doing more of the same. You're going to piss out your magnesium. You don't want that. Vasoconstrict the blood flow to your brain about 20% while simultaneously increasing glutamate transmission across your neurotransmitters. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. It's an excitotoxin. That's a bad combination, what caffeine, coffee, and tea do. They decrease cerebral blood flow while simultaneously increasing metabolic rate in your neurons. That's not good. Remember the Peter Rogers, MD, supply and demand theory of neurodegeneration. The bigger the gap between oxygen and glucose delivery versus metabolic rate of the neuron, the more likely that neuron is going to go into programmed cell death, due to apoptosis, phosphatidylserine externalization. I got a bunch of lectures in much more detail about that. And the typical person's also simultaneously being exposed to mitochondrial inhibitors, so they can't even make enough ATP to meet their neuronal metabolic rates, so their neurons are at great risk to be destroyed, okay? And that'll lower their cognitive function. They also allow some alcohol, many of the high-fat phonies do, which I think is a mistake. I recommend 0 alcohol, not 1 drop. Some of them even recommend chocolate, which I think is insane. And MSG, monosodium glutamate. There's another brain excitotoxin. It's insane to be eating that crap, okay? Meaning that the monosodium glutamate, as in glutamate, okay? Glutamate, the neurotransmitter. You really don't want to go seeking that stuff out. The older you get, the more fragile you get, the more likely you're going to have breakdown areas in your blood-brain barrier where that can get access to it and cause excitotoxicity, overstimulation of neurons, raising their metabolic rate, making it more difficult for them to meet it. When a neuron can't meet its metabolic rate, it no longer can keep the phospholipid phosphatidylserine on its inner leaflet of its plasma membrane, and it'll flip to the outer leaflet, and when a bunch of them flip to the outer leaflet, that's an eat me sign for the macrophages of the brain, the microglia. And the reason the brain does that is it wants to remove brain cells that can't produce enough energy before they pop and burst. Because if the energy crisis gets severe in a neuron to the point where it can't maintain its plasma membrane, sodium, potassium, ATP pumps at all, then it'll just lyse. It'll open up, its contents will be exposed to the extracellular space. There'll be a big inflammatory reaction that kills adjacent neurons, collateral damage. So to prevent that, when the brain sees phosphatidylserine externalization, because the flipase and floppase ATP-dependent enzymes aren't working because they don't have enough ATP energy, the microglia just eat those neurons. So that's why when I see dementia, all I see is shrunken brains, diffuse shrunken brains. All this Alzheimer's, sporadic, non-genetic Alzheimer's is all BS, okay? What I see is atrophic brains over and over all day long, every day. Okay, what else? Tap water. You got to filter your tap water. Otherwise, you're ingesting fluoride and aluminum and other toxic chemicals and estrogenic chemicals. It's totally stupid to drink unfiltered water. You drink it out of a plastic bottle, you're ingesting microplastics. Better to have a reverse osmosis filter at home and catch it in a glass container, so to speak. Over-the-top ones work pretty well. I have separate lectures on that. They're in the ballpark of $350. Under the sink ones in the ballpark of $600. Different diets: lacto-vegetarian, ovo-vegetarian, pesco-vegetarians. I was lacto-vegetarian for about 15, 20 years before I studied milk in more detail. I'm like, holy crap, even skim milk increases prostate cancer risk in general. It's the animal protein. It's not just the animal food itself and the fat. I just made up this new word. I thought it seemed funny to me at the time. I don't know how good it is. Dumbo's diet. D-U-M-B-O. So D for dairy, U for UPF, ultra-processed food, M for meat, B for beer, O for oil, and then S for sweets. I jokingly have called, so the vegan Mediterranean diet, high-fat phony diet, I also call it buy my bullshit diet because it's often used to sell supplements like omega-3s, and there's a big push in that community now to sell protein powders and tell old people you need protein powders, which is nonsense. So it's pretty much, and it also tries to pretend that it's really a low-fat vegan diet and that it's really the, successor to Kempner, Pritikin, and McDougall and Esselstyn. But that's BS. It's sweeping them under the rug, the low-fat plant-based diets, low-fat fanatic diets is what I call them because they're the ones that work, and trying to pretend that this is the same thing, but it's not. It's BS. And that's why they won't interview me. That's why I'm ostracized from almost all the plant-based channels, because they've gone down this path, the vegan Mediterranean diet. Because if you're trying to make a living in this business, then you kind of have to go down this path, because this is all the commercial food, so you can get a sponsor and you can sell stuff. Spartan Vegan, I don't monetize my channel. I don't make 1 cent from this stuff. But I know it's important. I know it's good to talk about it, teach about it, try to keep the truth alive. But that's why, you see, why does almost everybody sell out and become a high-fat phony? Because that's where the money is. Okay, paleo keto carnivore diet, and this was jokingly called the Epstein diet because Peter Attia was linked to all that stuff, with the implication being that that's what, big money wants the pros to eat, make them fat, sick, and stupid as rapidly as possible and shorten their lifespan, so the world will be less populated. So anyways, that's a categorization of common diets from low fat to high fat. I hope you found that helpful.